One way the U.S. government plans to artificially stimulate spending and GDP is through a $15,000 first-time home buyer's credit, which is tucked into this $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. Now, I have no idea how much of that $1.9 trillion is budgeted from this $15,000 tax credit. I'm sure the true cost of the program will far exceed any government budget, which is always the case because the government always fails to account for the moral hazard that their own legislation creates. And with respect to this $15,000 first-time homebuyers credit, the moral hazard is going to be enormous, as will the opportunities for fraud. So they're going to be giving out a lot more $15,000 credits than they have budgeted. Of course, another problem with the whole thing is that it's unconstitutional. I mean, that's not going to matter. I mean, nobody really cares about the Constitution, but there's clearly nothing in the Constitution, and I've read it many times, that says that the federal government can give Americans money to use to buy homes. There's nothing in there about that. I mean, if Americans want to buy homes, then they need to be able to come up with the money. I mean, it's bad enough that the U.S. government is co-signing all the mortgages, right? Basically guaranteeing everyone's mortgage, which enables home buyers to borrow a lot more money and on much better terms than they could absent a government guarantee. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that they can do that. But now they want to move from not only guaranteeing the mortgage, but providing the down payment. Because what I do know about this program is the money is going to be accessible at the closing. So if you buy a house, when you go to close on that purchase, you can immediately access, I guess through the government, the $15,000, and you can apply that $15,000 towards your down payment or any other closing costs that may be associated with this purchase. And this is what's going to create the biggest moral hazard and the biggest opportunity for fraud, because obviously, too, a lot of the sellers are going to know that the buyer is going to get this $15,000, and there's a lot of opportunity for buyers to simply charge higher prices for beat-up homes, to have some kind of deal with the buyer, to maybe split some of that money. I mean, all sorts of fraud, houses that really have very little value. I mean, maybe people will end up buying houses that don't even exist. I don't know. But the problem is then you're basically combining a government guaranteed mortgage with a government provided down payment. In other words, you take 100% of the risk from home ownership out of the buyer and you put it on the U.S. taxpayer. Not even on the lender, really. It's just on the U.S. taxpayer, and not necessarily the U.S. taxpayer, anyone who owns U.S. dollars, because it's not likely tax revenue that's going to make up for the losses. It's going to be a printing press. They're going to print the money to recover all these losses. Now, the losses, of course, from this program are going to be enormous, right? This is one lesson that they did not learn, among others, from the 2008 financial crisis. Part of the problem with that crisis was that we made it too easy for people to gamble on real estate. We allowed nothing down loans. We allowed people to use teaser rates on adjustable rate mortgages to buy houses they couldn't afford. That was part of the problem. Now we want to recreate that environment, maybe to an even higher degree, because this is the deal that we're going to be offering Americans who do not now currently own a home. Or maybe they own one home, but maybe the spouse has never bought one or hasn't bought one recently, and so now they can buy a second home to take advantage of this risk-free speculation. But what you can do now, the government is telling you, hey, buy this house. It's not going to cost you anything, right? You don't have to come out of pocket one nickel. Just sign here, and now you own a home, and you can take out an adjustable rate mortgage where, the rate is very low. You don't have to worry about the rate going up in the future, because who cares? I mean, if the rate goes up, well, just stop making the payments, right? I mean, you can move out. I mean, what's the point? I mean, under normal circumstances, if you actually have to put a down payment, right? You actually have to take your hard-earned savings and use that money to buy a house. When you're doing that, you don't want to lose the money that you worked so hard to save. So you're not going to commit to a mortgage that you may not be able to afford, right? So you're going to want to find a fixed rate mortgage that you know you can afford, and then maybe buy a less expensive house so that you don't risk losing the down payment that you work so hard to save. But if you don't have to put anything down, if you've got nothing to lose, well, then buy the biggest house that you can get approved for. And if you have to fund it with an adjustable rate mortgage, so what? Because now you get to live in a nicer house. And if interest rates do go up in the future and you can't afford to make the payments, well, it's no big deal. That's not your problem anymore, right? You could just stop making your payments. In fact, the deal is actually better than that, because let's say somebody is a renter right now, right? So they're going to qualify for this program and they're paying rent. The government may actually give them a better deal where they can buy a condo, right, and put nothing down, and then their payments on their adjustable rate mortgage could actually be less than what they're now paying in rent. So why not buy? Especially if you get out of your lease, you can get your deposit back. Usually when somebody rents an apartment, they have to come up with last month, a security deposit. So you don't need any of that to buy a house under this program, right? So you get all your deposit money back, your last month rent, you put that in your pocket, and now you buy this house, and buy in quotes, because buy means you're actually spending money. You're not spending anything. You're just getting a free house thanks to the government. All you have to do is make the mortgage payments and then, make the property taxes and the maintenance. But you're not actually required to do any of that, because if you ever feel like not doing it, you just stop. Because one of two things are going to happen to that house that you got for free. One thing is the house goes up in value. Well, that's a windfall. Ka-ching, right? Potentially you sell it and you make a profit, or maybe you take out a loan against the equity that just got built up in your free house. So you can't do that when you're renting. You don't have a free option when you rent. That's basically what the government is giving everybody. It's a free call option on a house, but you get to live in the house. If the house goes up, you get to keep whatever profits, either again by selling the house or just taking out a loan against this equity that you got for nothing. On the other hand, what if the real estate market tanks and the house goes down? Well, you don't lose anything. You didn't put anything down. Now, you have two choices. You can either continue to make the payments on the house, even though you're underwater, right? You owe more than the house is worth. You can keep on making those payments and hope the house, the housing market improves and turns around, right? You could do that, or you can decide, screw it, I'm just going to stop making my mortgage payments. And while I'm at it, I'm not even going to pay my property taxes. And, I'm not going to bother with all this small maintenance, because who gives a damn? Because it's not really my house. The house belongs to the bank or the government. I'm just living here. You can decide to do that, and it probably will take the government 2 to 3 years, maybe more, to get you out of that house. I mean, especially if you complain, I'm not making my mortgage payments because of COVID, I'm sick, I'm afraid to get sick. I don't know, whatever kind of excuse you come up with. I'm sure they're not going to want to kick you out of your home if you're sick, or you're worried about getting sick or something like that. So you have a very good chance, if you take the government up on their program to get a free house, that you may end up living in that free house for many, many years without having to come up with a nickel in payments. And this, of course, is going to end up hurting the local community, because if you're not paying your property taxes while you're sitting in that house, because they're not going to do anything about it. They're probably going to wait for some type of foreclosure or something. I don't know how long it would take the county to foreclose on a home because you're, owe back property tax. It would probably just, build up on the home. So when the government finally kicked you out, or the lender finally kicked you out and was able to foreclose, the property tax would come first. So it would just exacerbate the losses to the lender, which, of course, the loans are all going to be guaranteed probably by the U.S. government anyway. So again, it's the taxpayer or the holders of U.S. dollars that end up losing under those circumstances. But in the meantime, this is going to fuel all sorts of demand for houses, and it is going to help push housing prices up, because now you have all these buyers coming in to buy their free homes with government money. That enables some people who own the lower end homes to sell those homes to the so-called first-time buyer, and now they can trade up. They can take this money and use it to buy a more expensive home.
Schiff Show.